I used to call it Vets I Recommend, which of course I still have lots of vets that I recommend. But over the years now, I've been bringing on people like Rita Hogan, who's a healer, and I bring on the two crazy cat ladies are going to be with us in a couple of weeks, and they were like, we're not a vet, right? I said, yeah, I know. So I just changed it to your pet's life coach, because that's kind of what I go by anyway, is your pet's life coach. And so, but tonight I'm so excited because I've talked to Dr. Kangas for, recently, but I haven't had her on the show in a really long time. So I want you guys to meet and she's local for us here in California. She's not that local for me, but she's clear down in San Diego. But Dr. Katie Kangas is with us tonight. We're very fortunate to have her. Dr. Kangas, hi, how are you?
Great. Thank you so much, Carrie. It's really a pleasure to join you. I've missed appearing with you, but of course, I was so thrilled to be at the in-person conference that just occurred last month. So the Redefining Pet Health, that was fantastic. So it's so fun to see you again already.
Yeah, that conference, just having, it was kind of like my coming out of the closet kind of moment, so to speak, is I'm just tired of like hiding it. I started doing all the podcasting and stuff, and then to have all of you guys come together, and it's really good for someone like me. And I know there's a lot of us out there who aren't veterinarians, and yet we're inundated in this stuff every day, and we don't have a lot of support from veterinarians that don't believe us. So it's really amazing to have people like you that just can kind of help go. I know somebody once said that Dr. Karen Becker was like the Mother Teresa for her, and it gave her the courage to come out and speak. And for me, it's you, and it's Dr. Suter, and it's all this, just having you guys there to say you're not crazy is really helpful.
Far from it. And what a tremendous job you did collaborating and putting such a wonderful group and event together to really, really connect so many ideas and knowledge sets and everything. That was just such a good give and take with, the attendees and, all the interest, the energy, it was just phenomenal. So thank you. Thank you. Yeah. You're not crazy. You're only good crazy. You're fantastic crazy.
Whoop, whoop. Well, so long as if I'm crazy with all of you guys, and I'm fine. I'll be crazy.
There you go. So yep. Thank you.
Because I haven't had Dr. Kangas on as much as I would like to, because I would do it every Wednesday, but she's a very, very, very busy veterinarian down in San Diego. Can you just share a little bit with everybody, just kind of give them a little heads up, like how long you've been a vet, and, where you went to vet school, kind of your philosophy on what it means to be a holistic veterinarian?
Absolutely. So thank you, Carrie. And I'll just start out by saying, I know Carrie said I'm not that local to her, but the good news is I do a lot of telemedicine. So for anybody listening or anybody that you want to potentially share my information with, I would say it's getting to the point where 30% of, or maybe even more of the work that I do is telemedicine. That's awesome. So, and I'm, I just feel continual gratitude for the fact that we have so much success with our patients getting better and resolving chronic issues with pets that I don't even get to see in person. I mean, it's remarkable. Wow. And so, I'm thrilled to offer that, telemedicine option to people. So wanted to put that out there. And then to get directly more to your question, just to give everybody a little bit of synopsis of me or background, my practice, as Carrie said, is in San Diego. It's called Integrative Veterinary Care. I now specialize in pretty much all holistic via integrative, combining a lot of modalities together, but I don't do full service general practice anymore. I did for years, and I did lots of surgery. I also have shelter work in my background. I have exotics in my background. I worked at zoos and wildlife centers. I've been a vet for, I can't believe it, 30 years. And I've done lots of things in those years. But for 15 years now, I have focused on holistic, and I became acupuncture certified in 2008. And I worked at a holistic practice since then, called Animal Healing Center initially in San Diego. Keith Weingart, who is very near and dear friend and my mentor, Dr. Keith Weingart, the holistic vet that I sought out for when I needed help with my doggie, and I was a shelter vet at the time. And I'd always had interest in being a holistic vet, but didn't know anybody who did it. I always had interest in holistic modalities, but didn't have anybody to follow. And then as our often happens, our own animals turn out to be our teachers and our instigators of going in new directions and, really creating new possibilities. And that's what my dog Asti did for me. And at the time, back in 2005, she was 12 years old, and she was a black lab mix. And it was getting to the point where she was so weak in her hind end with, arthritic and disc problems, probably in the very lower spine, that she started struggling with mobility and quality of life. And Western medicine really didn't have a lot to offer. There wasn't really, much success coming. And so it pushed me to find somebody to do acupuncture and talk to me about diet and herbal and all of those things. And it blew me away and opened my mind. And the results I got to see, I'm getting the chills as I'm talking about it. The results I got to see with my own dog, and so beautiful. That's what she taught me, is how much this can do. And I saw as she literally went from falling down, barely able to defecate without falling down in it, to jogging again. I mean, not miles and miles, but short
Right.
distances, jogging, walking fine. Tremendous quality of life. Completely changed her diet. I had her on kibble. This was years and years and years ago. And I said to myself, there's no way I can't share this with other people. I have to learn this. And so um, I put my notice in with the shelter, and I was the director of veterinary services actually at the Humane Society and SPCA here in San Diego, and put my notice in and went off to acupuncture school and went on to advanced acupuncture, food therapy, herbal courses. And what I really funneled into over the years is functional medicine. And that's how I really describe myself, as kind of my first go-to. Certainly nutrition is a huge part of functional medicine. So nutrition and diet are obviously a major focus of mine, but within sort of the context of functional medicine. And the way that I love to describe that for everyone is that there's really two main principles that I see within a functional medicine, kind of broad context. And the first one is, what tools can we give to the body to help it function optimally? And obviously the number one tool is food,
Right.
and so nutrition, but you can add in, nutritional supplements and herbs and other tools that help the body to function best. And then the other principle of functional medicine, which is also very important, is what can we avoid and minimize in our life and our lifestyles, and obviously our pets' lives, that is causing disease and causing illness and degeneration to the cells and inflammation and chronic issues. And so really it's building the body up to be at its best and to have its innate ability to heal and function well, and minimizing and removing the things that are tearing the body down.
Yeah.
So a long answer to, I really funneled into functional medicine. And now at my practice, I certainly, as you probably guess, I do acupuncture. We do chiropractic. I actually have a chiropractor that works with us. We have a certified canine massage therapist who is phenomenal. And she also does our ozone therapy, our laser therapy. She also does healing touch, which is energy healing, and it's kind
Yeah.
of akin to Reiki. So we offer energy healing for our patients too. And it's phenomenal. So we do a lot of things, and then fecal transfer, laser therapy, all the holistic kind of things. And then we also do a lot of blood work and lab work. So that is the one thing I often tell my clients: I don't do surgery anymore. We do have thermal imaging, which is really awesome to find inflammation and things in the body, but we don't have x-rays and ultrasounds and surgery and things like that anymore. But we do a lot of blood work, because obviously, most holistic practitioners or naturopath type doctors were really into lab work, because we want to see a
Yeah.
picture of what's going on in the body and what's happening, so that we can make our best treatment plan with our natural options based on customized information of that individual and what they need. So, and I do a lot of nutrient testing too, by the way. I do a lot of vitamin D and vitamin B12, cobalamin and magnesium, and a lot of things that pets are deficient in. And that is hugely helpful. And the interesting note, I'm going to just tag on to that real quick, is that when I first started nutrient testing several years ago, routinely for all of my patients, I thought for sure it would only be the dogs eating crappy kibble and unbalanced, home prepared diets of people that don't, know how to do a balanced recipe and things like that, that would have deficiencies. And oh, no, no, I was wrong.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stellar diets with high quality ingredients, even raw, that pets still have some significant deficiencies. So in my experience, there's no format of diet that's perfect. Every friend, some formulas are better than others but there's a lot of individualism in the body with what the body can absorb, depending on age, depending on if there's any medications or any GI issues. So, for instance, you can have two dogs in the same house eating the exact same food, and they can have completely different D levels, and one could be deficient and one might not, and they could be eating the same diet. And so it very much depends on individual things metabolically in the body as well. So,
I think that's another thing that kibble took or gave to us that was a negative in this idea that there was one complete balanced diet that you just poured into a bowl of food. And I know I tell my clients all the time, listen, I don't think your dog should eat this really great raw diet as his only source of food every single day. Because, right, I mean, I can't.
perfect.
That's why I'm such a big believer in balance over time. Like you need to be adding and subtracting and running those blood tests, because that's the other thing. A lot of times people don't want to do those diagnostics. And what's really sad is I had a client a while back and I told her, because she wanted to do home prepared diets, which I support, but
Yep.
I said, I need you to find a vet that you can run. I want you to check your vitamin D levels. I need you to do this. So she went back to her vet and said, I want to run a test for vitamin D. And his response was, and she goes, Carrie, I swear to you, that's exactly what he said. Why do you want me to run for vitamin D? Too much vitamin D can cause kidney failure. And she was like, no, I know. That's what she just kind of like,
Let's see if it's too much or perhaps too little, which is far more common actually. So,
yeah,
but
but she
yes,
was just like, yeah, that's why I'm here. I'm
yes.
supplementing some vitamin D and I want to
Hmm.
make sure I'm on the right track. And he didn't even know he didn't
I
have the
know. I
testing.
have to say that does not surprise me. And again, because I do telemedicine and I work with clients that are all over the place. And, I recommend all the time that if you're not local to me, please go in and have some vitamin testing done. Fortunately, the lab I work with, we can actually send people the kit. They could just go have the blood drawn locally and
That's
send
what I
it
was going
off that
to ask
way.
you next. Like,
So it
what are
is
they supposed
awesome.
to do when their vets are standing there going, I don't know, I don't mind looking
Exactly,
at it.
because we've had wonderful, wonderful, success with people just being able to get the blood drawn and send it out, and, people have been very, cooperative with that, other vets and stuff, which has been great. But on occasion, if we don't send the kid or, before people ask for it, they'll go ask for a test and they'll get that same kind of responses. "Why do you wanna do that? I've never done that. I don't know how to do it. I don't think it's necessary." And, here you are as your the pet parent with the advocating for your pet, knowing that this is important and not getting any support.
Yeah,
And so, it can be difficult. And that's why I always tell people that work with me, you generally need a primary vet at some point. You're going to need a general practitioner at some point, and maybe, an urgent care at some point when things come up. But if somebody's working with me alongside of their primary vet, even if I'm telemedicine, then I can support them with the things that they may not get support in the conventional realm.
that's good.
So, mhm.
What I tell my clients is, look, if Dr. Kangas can be your, looking at it, doing it through telemedicine, like you're saying, but they have to make sure their vet's on board with it. Because sometimes it can really make your vet upset that you don't think they know what they're doing. So I would, when you're out there talking to vets, just say, hey, you know what? I have another veterinarian that I also work with. And are you okay with us kind of conversing? Because I think it takes a team. I always tell people,
It does. It's
tell them
awesome.
it's a team. Don't exclude
Yep.
them and just go, you're just here to draw the blood.
Right.
Tell them that you want to work with a team of people and hopefully,
Exactly. Yeah. Hey, I want this nutrient testing. This is something that this other, holistic specialist does. And, I wanted to bring it in to see if you could help assist me with that so I can get these levels for my pet. And most
yeah.
people have been very, cooperative. And a lot of conventional vets, it's just outside of their knowledge base and they don't know, but they're still willing to help. On occasion, people meet resistance, but that's not the general. And, if your vet's really resistant, unless you absolutely love them, find somebody who's more supportive.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I think you have to be really careful with that arrogance, right? When you get that vet who's just that arrogant, it's a dangerous place to be because if something goes wrong, you're going to need some support. So, Shari, I wanted to say hi real quick to you. And then Dr. Kangas, Shari wants to know, is there something you recommend that is a powerhouse for good gut bacteria in a raw fed dog?
Awesome. I love that. And I was going to say too, so I'm going to lead into Shari's question with backing up to something you said, Carrie, about how I also recommend to my clients not, even if it's a stellar raw food diet, not to stay with the same diet all the time, change formulas, maybe even change brands, that sort of thing, as much rotation and variety over time as that doggy tolerates is, what you want, or that pet tolerates. And I also have a list of, and getting into Shari's question leading into that, I have a list of what I like to call medicinal foods or beneficial foods that I put on the go home sheet, my little recommendation appointment notes that I give certainly in the first session. And then anytime it applies, I have this list of recommended foods to enhance the diet of whatever, no matter what format, even if it's kibble, then it's really going to enhance it. But
Yeah.
if they're eating, the best of the best raw, these are still phenomenal nutrients that go generally above and beyond, or at least outside of the typical diet, that are going to profoundly impact the nutrient profile coming in and, their health. And so some of the foods on there include things like bone broth, raw milk, or kefir. And that is one of the things that can help with really good beneficial bacteria. Even if it's not fermented, raw dairy and raw milk is phenomenal with some good beneficial bacteria, some digestive enzymes, lots of vitamins and nutrients and other things. But it's fermented, then, even a higher, beneficial bacterial population in there. And then I'm a big fan of other fermented foods too. So even fermented veggies like sauerkraut. Generally, I tell people chop it fine. Sometimes it comes in really big strips and
Yeah.
might be a little bit, dogs don't generally chew, but I throw it in a food processor and I'll put a tablespoon or two. And, I have a larger dog, my lab sage, in her dish. And, let's see, other foods with beneficial bacteria, really, that's the main one. Some of the fermented veggies and the raw dairy.
You
So.
can get, I just went to a mushroom festival in Oregon. I spent 2 days at a mushroom festival and taking classes on mushrooms. And there was a lady there who's fermenting the mushrooms. And I mean, it was just awesome because mushrooms also, if they're grown outside, have vitamin D, which is a really good way to get vitamin D into your
Yep.
dog's diet. And they're fermenting them. So I'm like, this is awesome. Like, it's so exciting. I nerded out at that thing. Like,
Yep.
it was almost embarrassing for me. I'm like,
I love it. Yep.
I'm so excited about that stuff.
Yep. And you know what else? I just thought of something too, for Shari and everyone. The green juju products,
Oh yeah.
they came out with the Bams beets and the Lua's golden paste, or whatever the golden
Yeah,
one
yeah.
is.
Golden
And
one, yeah.
those are both fermented as well. So those are awesome. And
Yeah.
then Billy Hoekman was excited to share with us that the Bailey's blend, because out of their 3 versions, they have the yellow blend, the Just Greens, and the Bailey's blend, which has the cabbages and the Brussels sprout kind of stuff that'll ferment. So if you leave that in the fridge for 8 days or longer, it actually ferments, and then it's fermented as well. So
Ooh, I did not
I
know
know. So
that.
he said you could leave it on the counter for 24 hours, or if it's in the fridge for longer than 8 days, he's tested it and it's fermented, and it's still, he said you got 21 days to use it, and after 8 days it's fermented. So that's the Bailey's blend only.
I had no
Um,
idea. Oh,
And
I'm
then
so
there are 2 other little ones in the fun little pouch packets. The
yeah.
the yellow and the red beet are both fermented. So those are lovely ones too. And any of the fermented veggies, I mentioned kraut, but you can do fermented carrots and fermented beets and all the nice fermented veggies that have prebiotics and probiotics in it, because the fibers in those veggies are prebiotic as well.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
it's a really nice blend. Mhm.
Jessica, no kidding, right? I'm like, what? 8 days? What? Yeah, and then it's fermented. I'm so gonna do that.
Hi.
I get
Hi, Jessica. I have to say hi to Jessica,
yeah.
and Rusty and Hamilton too. Her lovely, lovely doggies.
Aw.
Yes.
I usually I usually get through the green juju before 8 days, but now I'm thinking I'm just gonna start doing that. Like I'll just keep one that I'm feeding and then one that's
Yep.
fermenting. Yeah.
So
And I'll have to just kind of rotate them that way. That's a good tip. I had no idea. No idea.
yay, little
There's so
useful.
much information out there. I feel like I can never get enough and stuff. So one of the things I wanted to talk about, we had talked about this before, is
Mhm.
fasting, because we spend so much time talking about what to feed, how to feed, how much to feed and all of this kind of stuff and when to feed. But one thing that we don't talk a lot about, and it can set some people off. I mean, I have even suggested fasting to somebody, and oh no, my dog, I can't, there's no way. I can't. I can't. So what are your thoughts on fasting? And maybe define a little bit about all the different types of fasting, maybe?
Yeah, so intermittent fasting is such a great topic. I love how you brought that in the contrast of the flip side of we always talk about what to eat, what to feed, how important it is to, for their food to be this, that, and the other. And it's like, well, what about some downtime away from food
Yeah.
too?
Yeah.
And that is such a great topic. And interestingly, I agree with you. I think most clients, if you bring up fasting, they'd be like, wow, what? But I will tell you, I've actually had a few clients in the last few months actually bring it up to me.
Oh,
And
good.
one of them was a pet with cancer, and the dad's a trainer. He's a personal fitness trainer, and I mean it's very, very becoming more known and popular idea of intermittent fasting for humans too. And turns out there's actually numerous studies and lots of articles out for intermittent fasting for dogs. And I wrote an article for Animal Wellness that appeared in their recent fall edition on intermittent fasting. So they actually reached out to me and said, would you like to take this topic and write an article for us? And I said, yes, I would love to take that topic. So did a bunch of, I knew quite a bit already, but obviously I read tons of articles, and there's some really great stuff too. I mean, obviously Karen Becker has always tons of great information you can surf through in her backlogs of articles, but in the new Forever Dog book with Karen and Rodney Habib, they've got some great stuff on intermittent fasting too.
Yeah.
So, and I will back up and tell you the client that I was just referring to who asked me about intermittent fasting specifically was because his dog has cancer. And so intermittent fasting is known to very much help in that situation, but really it can help in just to stay healthy and good preventative health, because when you're not constantly eating and your digestive tract and digestive system isn't constantly having work to do, that's when your body, when you're downtime away from digestion, that's when the body goes into self-healing and self-cleanup mode. And cells, that are degenerating and mutating, that's when the body gets to engulf them. The macrophages come in and, do the self-cleanup job. And a lot of the enzymes that are required and just the pathways of doing that are not going to be active when the body's digesting food all the time. So intermittent fasting can help decrease inflammation, can help clear up mutations, can help the body to heal on so many levels. And it's definitely looked at for cancer, but obviously also for weight management and chronic issues of all kinds. Now that said, intermittent fasting isn't always appropriate for every dog. And so there are some situations and some, dog sizes, certainly individual health things, and scenarios and lifestyle that you would not want to do that. So you wouldn't want to do it with a geriatric dog, especially, somebody who's underweight and weak and stuff like that. You wouldn't want to do it for a lactating female or pregnant female. You wouldn't want to do it for a puppy, and I wouldn't recommend doing it for like little teacup toy breed, especially when they're younger. So I would discuss it with your holistic veterinarian, hopefully, as to whether or not it seems to be a right thing for your dog. But definitely intermittent fasting has been shown to be very beneficial, and I can talk more about some of the specific things that it's been found to help. But I don't know if you have any other questions to interject.
Well, sometimes people don't understand like intermittent meaning, because it can be all sorts of things, right? So you could
Mhm.
do, like, sometimes I just tell people maybe just go down to feeding your dog once a day instead of
Ex- yeah,
instead of two. And some of my clients are feeding 3 times a day plus treats in
right.
between. So it's this kind of thing. And then I actually, with my dogs, a couple of times a month, I actually will go 24 hours. So
Perfect.
that I do.
Yep.
I don't do it every day, but my dogs
Yep.
also only eat once a day. Um,
So you're already going 24 hours then. So they already
Well,
have a 24-hour fast.
yeah, so I guess what I mean is 48 because they will skip a dinner and then
Yeah,
go
so
all the
you
way.
go, that's hardcore. Yeah,
Yeah,
so
yeah,
that's good. Like a lot of, a lot of pet parents would, that would be a little challenge for them.
yeah,
But yeah, then your dog. So I tell people that all the time. There's several ways you can do intermittent fasting for your dog. You can either feed them once a day, which means they automatically get a 24-hour fast every day, which is
yeah,
amazing. You can feed them, say if you feed them twice a day, you can feed them normally 5 days a week or even 6 days a week and skip a meal once or twice a week. So once or twice a week, they're getting a nice 24-hour fast. Another way is called time restricted feeding, where you can put both of the meals into like inside of an 8-hour window. So say you fed at 9 a.m. and 5 p.m., then they get a natural 16-hour fast every day, which is also pretty good. So humans who goal for intermittent fasting goal for a 16 to 18-hour fast each day is kind of like the little going landmark there.
yeah,
And so a lot of people are doing that with their dogs too, and just putting the meals closer. So
yeah,
as long as the doggy does well with that, any of those scenarios can be a good choice. And like I said, there's just some dogs that might not be a good match. And what I would share with people is, in my clinical experience, small breed dogs tend to just have a little more of a tendency to vomit or bile vomit on an empty stomach. Like if their stomach is empty for an extended period of time, a lot of people are like, oh, if I don't give them a late night snack or a bedtime snack, they're vomiting in the middle of the night, or they're getting up, burping and, puking up in the early morning. Some people call it the hunger pukes, their stomach's
yeah,
empty too long. So, for some little breed dogs, it may not be easy to just plop in an intermittent fasting schedule. Not that I'm saying you probably can still achieve it in a lot of those dogs, but you might need to do a little, maneuvers with either adding in some digestive enzymes or digestive support, or slowly, gradually extending the window of time rather than just starting with a fast. You can kind of push out their meal time a couple hours and then extend and see how they do. And a fun thing to kind of put into context for everybody is that, when I'm thinking of extending the meal time, one of the nice things about fasting for any of us and not having food like on a clockwork schedule is your body becomes more metabolically flexible. I mean, it really, really helps the body to not be so dependent on, specific calories coming in, and being able to do, like I said, these other very important detox jobs and healing jobs inside the body too.
yeah. I'm so glad you brought up the empty stomach puking thing because I've
Hmm.
had a lot of that happen. And what I would suggest to people, and it has worked for at least the clients that I've dealt with, is getting that gut microbiome under control. And then once we start adding in those bacterias, suddenly the dog's not puking when its stomach is empty. So it's pretty interesting to me how they have that little short little digestive system, and it really needs to be supported with bacterias and all their job. And you brought up the digestive enzymes. I'm like, sometimes that's all it is that we're just not digesting the food properly, and maybe too fast or too slow or all that kind of stuff. So it's interesting. Jessica has a really great question, actually. She says, what about the dogs who need to take medication with food 2 times a day? Would decreasing the volumes of the meal for a modified fasting provide similar benefits?
That is a great
Great
question.
question.
I don't think it's going to achieve the same thing as intermittent fasting, but I do believe that it will be helpful. I do believe that that there is a health advantage to that.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
great question, Jessica. So
yeah,
because there are pets, obviously, that really rely on either medications that are really important at that time, or even supplements that go twice a day. So it can become a little bit difficult. So even smaller meals. And the other thing that we can bring into this discussion about intermittent fasting too is that not only is the timing of how you feed your pet, or the frequency of how you feed your pet, important, but lower carbohydrates. So, with Jessica, I know she feeds really great quality foods, and there's not going to be carb content, or much carb content in there. But when the body, and dogs especially, are eating carbohydrate type ingredients, so obviously the grains, but also the potatoes and the sweet potatoes and the peas and the garbanzos and chickpeas and all this stuff that's in even a lot of the grain-free foods we know, often have higher levels of carbohydrates.
Absolutely.
Carbohydrates, yep, and they will drive, more inflammation, more insulin release. So every time insulin gets released, then inflammation goes up. So I think back to Jessica's thing, the smaller meals, yes, and also if it's species appropriate and not carbs and not treats with oats and all these things that kind of drive the blood sugars up more, all the better.
Yeah.
So
I also, my dogs, other than doing that fasting, my dogs are getting older. So I'm just kind of messing around with their diet a little bit, trying to figure out like how much protein do I want to be giving them at their senior ages. So I probably twice a month, maybe 3 times a month, I give them an all veggie meal. They had an all veggie meal last night because I make juices for myself. So
mhm.
I gave them the pulp. So they had like apples and they had all the pulp that they had.
And
And they just had,
yeah, and fiber and everything is so great too. So yeah, there's so many different thoughts out there of, what is useful. And, I don't know that, of course, there's not been any specific studies on protein into aging other than, unfortunately, the general conventional concept is, you got to go to low protein when your pets are older,
yeah.
and prescription diets, which of course none of us would agree with, but
No,
I love the variety in those
it's
things,
just
and
a
and
variety.
the
Yeah.
the
It's changed.
fibers and the
Mhm.
starches and the natural components coming in those other veggie and fibrous sources can really have a lot of benefit too, and feeding the microbiome.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
did not realize, I love how you brought the microbiome up for, the vomiting thing and the,
Upper,
the hunger stomach.
yeah.
Yeah. Because the microbiome is so tremendously important. And the more we learn about that, it's really fascinating. And I didn't know until I started running so many animal biome testings on my patients, how many dogs need more fiber in their diet.
So much more.
Almost, I mean, I would say 80% of the profiles that I see coming back, one of the top recommendations is this dog needs more fiber,
Yep.
because there's some key bacterial groups that are supposed to be fairly largely represented in the gut. They give you the populations of what's normal. These guys are in big numbers. These guys are important, but they're in smaller numbers. And there's some big numbered bacteria that are like depleted in the vast majority of dogs because they're not getting enough fiber. And even excellent raw food diets, I see that they still need more fiber, because a lot of raw food feeders and a lot of raw food formulators and companies, there's varying opinions on the veggie
There's
content.
huge.
And so a lot of companies don't include much veggie,
Yeah.
and there's a lot of dogs that really need fiber. And so I've started recommending, especially because the animal biome company recommends these things too, ground flaxseed, or a mixture or rotation of ground flaxseed, ground pumpkin seed, ground sunflower seed, ground hemp seed, ground
Yep.
chia seed, and those things have, protein in them, plus some healthy fats, plus a lot of minerals. I mean, selenium and zinc and all these great things, the pumpkin
Mhm.
seeds and all this stuff. So it's a way to get fiber, but a way to get some really wonderful nutrients in there too. And so that's something that you can add in, teaspoon for half a teaspoon for little tiny doggies, teaspoon for small dogs, tablespoon for big dogs, either in each meal or once a day or whatever, to get a little more fiber. Make sure it's ground, by the way, if anybody's doing the ground seeds. You don't want to throw whole seeds in. You're going to see them poop out whole seeds. They're not going to digest that. So throw them in a food processor to grind them fine, or get a coffee grinder and make that your little seed grinder and do it that way.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
I love it. I absolutely grind up some. I actually have given my dogs whole pumpkin seeds because they like to hunt for them.
Mhm.
You're right.
They'll probably
Exactly.
poop them out. I mean, it's not a problem, but
They
they're
like to
not going to
hunt
get the
for them.
fiber out of them so much when you do
Yeah.
it that way.
But
Yeah.
I'll grind them up too because I use a blender and stuff. I love to
Yep.
give my dogs the leftovers from my juices if I drink a juice, and so I will give. The only thing you have to be really careful of is make sure everything, because grapes, I try to stay away from grapes, but I love grapes in my juice, so I always grind up the part that I know they can eat and do the grapes last. So and then I
Perfect. Yep.
make
Yep.
whatever, but.
Yep.
But yeah, and they love it, and they'll have a veggie night, and then they'll have some nights they get like if I give them a lot of like chicken feet, like fermented chicken feet from different companies make them now. I might give those. That is just their meal. Like they had, my little one
Which
might
is
have.
great.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
Instead of giving him more meat and more bone,
Yep.
and
And
just
even
allow.
some of the, when I did my research to do the intermittent fasting article, a couple of the vets that had written articles, including Karen Becker, that was one of the suggestions of, if you don't want to if you're having trouble truly fasting your dog, maybe give them a bone, maybe
Yeah,
give them,
yeah,
something to actively chew on that is a substitute of a meal.
yeah.
And and one of the things she talked about in one of her articles that I really appreciated is, she said, because this is such a cool conversation, is that so many of us associate giving our dogs food with loving them. Oh,
Mhm.
this is the way that we
Yeah.
interact with them and we bond with them and we share smiles and laughs, and they're so excited to eat, and so it's so fun, and so it's hard for us as pet parents to fast them because we're like, we enjoy giving them food. And so one of the parts of Dr. Becker's article was, find other ways to enrich your dog's life besides just food, and really open and create the ways that you can bond with them and interact with them and play with them. Go on an extra walk, play a game, get a toy, brush them, do something where you're loving on them, and it doesn't have to always be food centered. And I was
They
like,
won't even
cool, cool, cool.
someone asked me that when I once I was talking about having them learn about fasting, and, "Well, what do you," I mean, they're just gonna be sitting there staring at you, and I'm like, "Well, not if I'm playing ball with them," or, my dogs like to sit on the couch and watch a movie with me, and they're right there. They're not even thinking about their food because I'm just finding other ways. Maybe we go for a walk. A lot of times, if I know I'm gonna have a fasting day, I'll take them to doggy daycare with me, and they'll run around, and so they're just exhausted when they get home. So you're right. I didn't know that was in the book. I haven't read through all of it, but that's exactly, just find something else that
Yep.
they're doing. Goat's milk. Sometimes I will tell people, okay, you're not going to fast. How about, what if we just give some goat's milk, like the cheese, like the little goat cheeses,
Yep.
and make it
Yep.
that at least it's, I mean, it's not totally fasting, but it's
Right. Or
healthy.
even the goat milk, like you said, a little liquid meal, a little, it's
Yeah,
absorbed so easily. It's absorbed very quickly. It's not like this solid food that has
yeah,
to really get broken down and go through digestion and all that kind of stuff. So honestly, that's probably one of the better things, close to
yeah.
fasting for, getting any kind of intake. So that's a great idea.
Yeah, I love to do goat's milk fasts when I'm trying to
Mhm.
help people. I have a dog, I just saw today. Actually, I told her to come on. Hopefully, she'll be on today. And we're going to do 2 days of some goat's milk and see if we can get this dog under control. She's got a lot going on. Her mom's getting to that point where she's frustrated. But it was interesting, and I shared this with her, and I don't remember who told. Well, Billy told me, but then we started talking. They fasted a dog for 5 years, and
And
I
running, 5
couldn't.
years and still running. Yeah, Billy's told me a few times about that dog. He's like, everyone's just shocked that dog is still thriving.
5 years
Perfectly
on.
fine. And I'm like, "Do they ever test food again?" And he's like, he was so sick before they did that,
They don't
that
wanna.
the last report he gave me is that those pet parents were like, he is so healthy, we don't wanna rock the boat." Like, they were just worried, like, his body hasn't seen food in a really long time. Like, do we really wanna test the waters at this point, you know?
Yeah,
So,
isn't it?
how interesting. It's
It's
amazing.
so crazy, and
Mhm.
but it's not really, right, when you think about it. I mean,
It's a whole food. It's a
the whole
complete food.
food.
Yeah, that's what I love to break down to people. When I was just telling somebody yesterday, a new client for me, and this doggy, she has a Frenchie with just a ton of health problems, and he's just very emaciated. He's very underweight, and he has severe muscle atrophy. And I was explaining to her that when his digestion can handle it, because we have to be slow with doing new things. He's got a whole digestive history as well as a lot of other health complications. And I said, when we can get there, one of my favorite foods for him is going to be raw milk, because I consider that not only as a liquid meal replacer, because it's a fully balanced meal, everything the body needs is in there. It is so accessible to the body to absorb and utilize those nutrients way easier than solid food. And the way I like to describe it to people is that when your dog is eating protein, especially, I mean, most, obviously dogs being scavenging carnivores, but mostly carnivores, and cats as obligate carnivores, most of their diet is protein. And protein takes a lot of digestive demand to,
Yeah,
to digest. And that's why it's so important for a dog's stomach to be acidic. And that's a whole nother cool conversation. But it takes a lot of digestive effort to break down those, proteins to the components that they need to be, to, to free up the amino acids, the building blocks of proteins, and to those amino acids to be able to be utilized in the body's tissues and the muscles and all that, there's a lot of digestive effort that has to occur for that process to happen. When you drink raw milk, those amino acids are already free. They're already freed up. They're ready to go. They're not, they're ready to absorb into the body. There's no breakdown needed, which makes sense because Mother Nature would have designed a food for babies and neonates that would take no extra, and you don't want to steal energy from a baby.
From a baby, yeah.
Babies, yeah, and then they're growing and developing, and they need something that is very easy to use. So it's a beautiful food for babies, but it's a beautiful food for elderly or geriatric or somebody who's underweight or somebody who needs more muscle mass or somebody that just needs something that's easy to digest.
Yeah.
So it's a complete meal and it's darn easy to digest. And what a great medicinal food.
Best benefits from people who are on board with that. A while back, I had a lady, she wanted to do it, but she was struggling because she had husband, teenagers, all of this, but she had a dog that was just having a hard time. So I asked her, if you want, he can come stay with me and I'll do it. And I mean, within 2 days, that dog's skin, I mean, I took pictures and we just kept going and she couldn't believe it because, we're talking Apoquel, Cytopoint, the whole 9 yards, the hydrolyzed foods, the everything. And so goat's milk was his way to go. And then she slowly started introducing food to try to figure out what he was going to be reactive to. She had done all of the allergy tests and those are, I like them, but I think they're hit or miss sometimes.
Right. Some mixed success. Yeah.
Like sometimes it's great. Sometimes it didn't work. And so we just kind of did it that way. It's amazing.
Mm-hmm. And it's nice when, somebody has a resource, if they can't do it and that's just a little bit beyond what they feel they can manage, then, maybe there's another outlet that will help you. But that's so cool, Carrie. And I will tell you, I've only had a few, although I've talked about it with clients before, and I don't bring it up, tremendous amount of times, but certainly when I feel that it's something that could apply very well to a specific patient, I will talk about raw goat milk fasting. And I've had, I think only in my recent memory, I've had 2 clients do it. One of them is a naturopath, human ND doctor. And so she jumped on it, right? She's like, I'm doing it because she knows the beauty of, fasting for the body, because she tells her patients to fast for, 48 or 72 hours to literally just go into self-healing mode and cleanup mode. So she was all over it. And I should have done before and after pictures. And I should actually ask her still if she has some that I could just put together for fun. But her dog was a mess with skin. It was all, dermatitis and skin and ears and horrible itching and all that kind of stuff. And they did 30 days of goat milk fast and they had a whole new dog was completely new picture. Yeah. They were like, wow. So yeah, they were thrilled. So
yeah. My favorite time to tell people, if you're thinking about doing it, but you're on the fence and you're not sure, I don't know if I want to do this, do it on July 3rd. People are like, why July 3rd? I'm all, because if your dog is afraid of fireworks on July 4th, he's going to have diarrhea. So you might as well just fast him on July 3rd. And then maybe he won't. I mean, as a vet, back when I was a vet tech, I knew July 5th, our doors were going to be loaded with the diarrhea dogs. They're freaking out. They have diarrhea. And so I always tell people, if you're thinking about doing it, do it on July 3rd.
I love that. That's very cute and totally applicable. But if you don't want to wait till July 3rd, then
start it. I mean, a good way to start getting used to it is through the goat's milk, right? Like I want to do fasting, but I feel bad for my dog. And to your point, which I think is such a good point, it's really more about our bonding, and that's our time to love our animals. And, I knew it because that's what I do when I'm fasting my dogs. I'm like, I got to figure out something to do for them so they're not. But now at this point, honestly, my dogs have done this for so long. They don't know another
Which
life.
is perfect. And when I mentioned metabolic flexibility too, is I think one of the reasons perhaps for some of the hunger pukes and the dogs that don't do well with the extended periods of time too, is that their body is expecting, literally their metabolic internal clock is like, I'm going to eat at this time and this time. Yeah. And if they don't get fed at that time, their body's doing something exactly, or they're stressed or whatever. And so if you can slowly kind of create a shift for them where metabolically and mentally and emotionally, they are not depending on that to happen. Yep. And of course, in the wild, everybody's metabolically flexible. You have to be, or you're not going to survive. And that's the great thing about, all the studies they did.
That's the 4 o'clock rabbit.
Right. Exactly. You're exactly right. And that's what I brought into my article is, all the studies on wild are doggies' wild counterparts, and their digestive systems are identical to
Yeah.
wolves and, wild canines. And they don't know when their next meal. They have to scavenge and hunt to find theirs. And there might be 24 hours that pass. They might find something in 8 hours one time, and then they might 36 hours the next time. So they don't know when the next thing coming. Their body isn't expecting a specific time. And that's the natural way to be healthy,
Yeah.
So
So I did a podcast with a wolf expert out of Montana, I think he was, and they do a lot of videoing and have the cameras out there, and they're watching these wolves. And so he has some cases of wolves hunting and killing the elk and then dragging it out into the woods and leaving it there and then waiting and going back. He said 3 weeks later they left it there. And so I asked him, I said, why do you think? And he goes, and that's not uncommon. That's that we see that happen where they're not eating anything else and they just leave it there. And I really thought, God, is that the nature's way of fermenting its food? Like,
what's funny is when you were saying that, I'm like, I bet they were letting it ferment. You want to know
yeah,
something really, really cool? Is I went to a Weston Price. I know Billy Hoekman is really into the Western Price Foundation too, and they're all about functional medicine and nutrition. And it's, they would be teaching stuff with intermittent fasting and fermentation and, sprouting your food and, all that
yeah,
kind of stuff. And I learned in a seminar, one of their seminars years ago, that they observed, and did these observation studies or whatever on dogs in super cold climates like the Arctic Circle or Alaska, Northern Alaska or whatever. And they would watch these, husky dogs and Malamutes, and they would get fish, and, either their caretakers were feeding it to them or whatever, and they would go bury it. And they would bury it for weeks and then go back and get it. And they would dig it up and they would like, why do these dogs do this? And they found out the fish were fermented.
yeah.
And of course, there's like fermented fish stock and all this kind of stuff that became popular for dogs. Well, if dogs were given an opportunity to innately do some of that, they would do it on their own.
Yeah,
So,
that's what I mean. He didn't know because he's like,
mhm.
that's not really what he was studying. They just know that they're doing it. They
Yeah.
just know that they're bringing these animals out there. They're leaving them there. The food, they're hungry. They're not going and eating
Mhm.
other food. They're just leaving that
That is
there.
so interesting.
Like
Yeah.
that's so crazy. And then they go back there. And then Cambridge University, this one really threw me for a loop. So Cambridge University did a study on a collie, and they did it 2 years in a row. The first year they wanted to know at what point would the nitrates increase. Basically, they wanted to know when the dog would die, how long you could fast an animal was the hypothesis.
Got it. Okay.
152 days.
I think I read that. I think I
I was
read
like,
that in
whoa.
in some of the research I did.
And
Yeah,
that's
that
without
is
goat milk. That was just water.
crazy.
Yeah. Isn't that crazy? Cambridge.
Yeah.
And they did the same poor dog the next year and got the same, very similar results by like off by like a
Poor
day.
dog.
I know. I'm like, this poor dog, nothing but water. But they said at 51 days or 50 days, the energy. So he went into ketosis,
Ketosis,
obviously. His
clearly, yeah.
energy just went out of control. They said they couldn't even, they had to like move his kennel. Like he was just all over the place, just super wild. So
Yeah.
152 days.
Remarkable what the body
Yeah.
can do. And, it's just good to learn stuff that helps us figure out how we can apply that in the best way for our pets,
Yeah.
but such incredible information.
I always share that with my clients because I was like, look, I'm asking you to do like
Exactly. We're not gonna exactly. Yeah. So that's
one.
why, yeah, it just puts things in a perspective and
Yeah.
also just gives you a deep appreciation for what the body can do
Yeah.
in a lot of circumstances. Not that we would want to do that to our pets and act on that by any means, but it's really
Sure.
remarkable to know how that, panned out for that dog. Wow.
Yeah. It's also a testament to how much like the universities are really looking into fasting. Like this is,
Mhm.
they're recognizing, hey, we have something here and we need to look at it. I always think back, like go all the way back to like caveman. I mean, they wouldn't have eaten 3 times a day. They couldn't have because they spent most of their day trying to hunt down food.
Right.
So I don't think that we were ever even designed to eat 3 meals a day. I really don't. And
Right.
so,
Yeah. Yeah.
but to
And it would change seasonally, it would change depending on where you are.
yeah,
It would change, on your access to things. And again, that can be seasonal and other things. So yeah, it would have been, again, we would have been much more metabolically flexible than
yeah,
most people probably are in today's societies.
yeah. I think that's why our animals and ourselves are sicker because it's like we're fighting against what was naturally supposed to happen.
Right.
We're constantly, like you said, I love that you talk about when you're fasting, your body kind of goes into that's repair mode when you don't have food. It's like sleeping. We know that everybody can agree.
Regenerative. Yep.
Sleep,
You're
your body,
regenerating when you're sleeping, and
so
you're also repairing when you're not eating.
when you're not eating, it
Um,
makes so much sense because we know how much energy it takes to digest.
yep.
So yeah,
That's
I
why you
just went.
get sleepy. Yeah, when you
Yeah,
yep.
it's so much.
So
I just went to I was telling you about it off camera. I was telling Dr. Kingus about this uh wellness thing that I went to, the thing I was telling you about. And they were
oh,
talking about
so remarkable.
how much cortisol is used to digest food. And that's the stress.
Mhm.
So you're
Right,
thinking,
yeah, because there's some natural I mean, there's natural stress that happens with, physiologic things, but just knowing that when you eat, your body does have to release cortisol,
yeah,
and that's a natural thing. But again, you don't want that to happen excessively if
right,
you can help it. So again, when you're not eating excessively, then you're going to have less cortisol release, which is hugely
huge, huge.
helpful. And simply you'll have, unless you're eating a very ketogenic diet, you're going to have a lot less insulin produced, which also creates or is linked to inflammation and degeneration. And one of the things that they found repeatedly in studies of intermittent fasting dogs is that they had better, and a lot of people on ketogenic diets know they have better mental clarity. They don't get the brain fog and all the little dips of, feeling tired, like when you eat a lot of carbs. But a lot of dogs they studied had less cognitive dysfunction, all the dementia symptoms, all those kinds of things, much better, remarkable success with dogs that aren't eating all the time with brain function, but with everything else too, with cancers and diseases of many kinds. So
Yeah. Yeah. I was talking to online, somebody had asked about fasting. And then of course I gave my opinion. And then of course, because it's Facebook, I got told I'm stupid. So not in those many words, but basically that's what was said. And so, I'm trying to help, but it's really hard when someone comes off on you like that. Then you kind of, but if I read through her upset lines, what I got out of it is that she really believes that people who are suggesting that we fast our animals, we're going to prevent cancer. And so I know you touched on it a little bit, but that's not necessarily what we're saying, right? It's not,
well, I mean,
we'll never get cancer again.
right. I mean, no, there's no, I mean, never
Right,
guarantee. I
right.
mean, I have people, I mean, let's just put this into a little bit of context. I mean, I have clients, bless their hearts, of course, that can be very frustrated at times where they're like, I've done everything right. I haven't over vaccinated. I feed a raw food diet. I feed a fresh diet. I don't spray Roundup in my yard and my dog still got cancer.
Yeah.
WTF, it's like,
Yeah.
why is this happening? And so, we can't ever guarantee, but we certainly know that
Right.
when you do these things, you are so much more likely to have less problems and to have a healthier body and a healthier pet when you do these things. But there's no guarantee. So just because you fast doesn't mean you're not going to get cancer, but it certainly lessens the likelihood,
Yeah.
I mean, and studies have proven that,
Yeah.
in both dogs and humans and mice and, other things too. So.
There's so many studies on it. That was an
Mhm.
interesting thing too. Because of
Mhm.
course, on Facebook, then the inevitable, do you have studies on this? Which I love because I'm like,
Say,
well,
"Brrr,
funny thing too,
here, I'll give you
yesterday,
some."
and then all of a sudden it gets quiet and you don't hear anything again.
Yeah.
But sometimes
It's
it's
hard.
frustrating.
Opinions are so strong and there's so many, and
I
it's, nutrition is always a very controversial topic on every level in every species, and stuff is that was taken for truth is, disproven all the time. And I mean, and that happens with other medical categories too, but it's, it's a heated topic. And so it can be difficult and a lot of people can get defensive on certain things. So,
It is a heated topic, and it is so strange to me because it just seems so. I hate if there's any vet techs here. I am not personally calling you out, but I will say that the vet techs are the ones that will come at you really hard and fast,
mm,
more so than any other group that I've seen. And I used to be a vet tech, so I feel like I can say that.
right. You're
But,
like, I'm talking about my own people.
yeah, like I remember, but it's crazy because they will really just jump on you if you say anything about nutrition, and it's so strange to me because in the human world, there's not, I don't think, I mean, maybe there is, but I don't think there's a doctor out there that would say, you should really eat more processed food. So it's very
I
strange. to me
I
that it's
share that with people all the time that, and I think I heard Dr. Karen Becker say it years ago, and it was like such a great comment. She's like, the veterinary profession is the only medical sector that says it's better to eat processed food. Like, how does that make any sense?
yeah,
A human doctor would never tell you
never,
that, I mean, if they
never.
know anything or care about nutrition. So,
Yeah.
but it is a heated topic, even with, you mentioned vet techs can get really
Oh,
opinionated about it, but of course, veterinarians do too. And I have
yeah.
to hear from my clients all the time that, when they bring up their conventional vet, their primary vet asks them or their specialist asks them what they're feeding. And, some people just lie and don't say I'm feeding raw because they don't
A
want
lot
the
of people lie.
lecture.
A lot of
They
people
don't,
lie.
they don't, they don't want the lecture and the browbeating. And then,
Yeah.
some people do, and, go through that, whole ordeal. And, there are, of course, some veterinarians that are open, but the vast majority of veterinarians have been so ingrained. We all went to the same kind of format of veterinary school, and it's been so ingrained that this is what pet nutrition is supposed to be, that there's very rigid lines in people's brains, and it's very hard to get outside of that. And
Yeah.
even the unfortunate, the AVMA, the American Veterinary Medical Association, has like a, whatever their official saying that dogs should eat raw, blah, blah, blah. And so, vets will quote that all the time, and they'll send home handouts with the quotes on there. And, this is what, and so, there's a lot of opinions, and there's a lot of very strong opinions.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Even within the raw, that's what really started to get me weird. Like, kind of, what's going on, guys? Like, we should be sticking together. And even within the raw, because you have a lot of people actually interested, get your opinion on this. You have the people who believe that your dog is a wolf and he's a canine and he should only eat meat, bone, blood, and nothing else. I have a guy like that here locally who just absolutely believes that. And when I was kind of, because as a vet tech, of course, I used to recommend science diet. Of course, like that's what we did in the 80s. We thought that was the greatest thing ever made. But as I started realizing this didn't make sense, like it just didn't, I don't care how much Pizza Hills bought me, it didn't make sense. But, I had to go back and forth. Like, are they only supposed to eat meat, bone, and blood? And that is why, and Lori had posted on there, thank you, Lori, the interview I did with the wolf expert, is because I was like, wait a second. What do wolves eat? I'm just assuming they eat meat, bone, and blood because you're telling me that they do. But is that true? And so I went down into a wolf den, actually in Yellowstone. So I've spent time with 2 wolf experts. I know that's not a lot. And actually, they don't just eat meat, bone, and
of
blood.
course not. Of course not. That's why they call them scavenging carnivores, because
Yeah,
they scavenge for other things. And I
right.
tell people that all the time too, is I think one of the reasons why pets that eat a modern day raw food diet, even though that is very species appropriate compared to, most anything
Right.
else that's not a whole prey diet or a scavenging diet, because in the wild, not only when they catch a prey, they would be getting beaks and toenails and feathers and hair and skin and all that kind of stuff. But they would be foraging, and they might eat a little bit of shrubbery and some berries and a little bit of,
Yep.
they're not going to be eating carrots and root vegetables, but they're going to be eating some plant material and some fruits and, other things, and they're scavenging. And certainly when they eat their prey, they're going to get the vegetable matter that's in the gut
Yep.
of the natural prey items. So it's much more varied and much more, appropriate than the modern day version. And therefore I personally, and I know that there's other opinions out there that are, very intelligent people that might disagree, but I do think that there should be some, and I've seen, like, from the microbiome, like I
Yeah.
said,
Yeah.
clinically, that they really do need some fiber. And I think some vegetable matter is very helpful.
Yeah.
And I'm all for, different varieties of things, and not just, a couple of items to rotate through. So
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I think that the animal biome test that you're going to think I'm weird. All of you are going to think this is weird, but I think it would be so cool to take the animal biome test to children in school and tell them to take it home and get their dog's animal biome And then that way we can teach nutrition to our kids when they start to put it together, right? Like it's just a science project. I'm not actually telling you to stop eating McDonald's. I'm just showing you what it does when you feed your pet
Right.
poorly.
Right.
We can
It
look at
would be a fun way to learn if there was any way to ever put something like that together, because a
it.
lot of people know, I mean, you and I both know that there are so many people and amazing pet parents and pet families that would do things for their pets that they won't even do for themselves.
Yep.
And so they will learn via
The
supporting
dog.
their pet
Yep.
more than they would ever. If you told them that for themselves, they would shrug it off, or they would be like, yeah, whatever, whatever, and then you tell them
Yep.
something for their pet and they're like, oh, let me try that for my pet. And then they learn that way.
Yeah.
And what a great thing. Because
Yeah.
that's
Because we
where
have
that's
so
where the
many.
passion is a lot of times.
Yeah, we have so many obese children, and I'm like, oh, let's teach them about their own microbiome, kind of trick them a little bit
Hmm.
into doing these little science projects. So, but I can't get anybody on board with my idea because I nerd out.
uh
When I do microbiome tests for clients, I am like, I can't wait to get the results back. I want to
yep.
look at it. It's so cool to see, to be able to actually see what's going on in the gut. It's so I
Hmm.
encourage everybody to get it.
Yay. Well, I'm in your nerd club. I I,
Yeah.
I get just as jazzed up. So it's
Who picks
perfect.
through poop and gets excited about it? Like I had to go out of town this past weekend and I had a client who wanted us to get her dog's microbiome test and I wasn't there. So somebody else got to do it. And I was like, dang it. Cause I like to get it and I like to just
Right.
kind of pick
Oh
through it
yeah.
and see it. It's kind of cool, but
Poop.
I'll get the results. I'll be able to look at the results.
Yep.
We had hers sent in. I wonder what you think about this. So I had hers sent in because her dog's mouth is very healthy. There's nothing broken. There's nothing cracked. There's no growths in the mouth. The dog is only, I think she's 3. She has no plaque buildup. There's nothing going on in the mouth that I can see. But her dog's breath is pretty bad.
Hmm.
And so I said, she just had some kidney tests done and the kidneys look
So
good.
good. Yep, that's something that's good to check out. And no clinical signs of gut issues,
No
no
clinical
reflux or
signs.
okay.
No,
Because I would be thinking, yeah, like you said, what's going on I mean, first of all, the mouth, that's you've ruled seemingly ruled most of those things out. But I will speak one more thing to the mouth. But then the next thing you think about would be gut or kidneys
yeah,
that can affect the breath. And so if the microbiome imbalance or just a gastric imbalance, that there's hypoacidity or there's some imbalance in the stomach compartment, then that can very much affect the breath too, because obviously there's a big relationship of sharing there. But it's possible there's something going on under the gum line. I mean, you
right.
probably would see if it was diffuse enough to cause
That much
bacterial
odor.
issues. But I would say, if you're not familiar with the teeth product, do you know about
Yes,
teeth?
Jessica just put it up here. So
Thank you, Jessica.
yeah,
Thank you. So, I love that product, and I have seen it work. So Jessica just tried it for her doggies, and she was amazed, even in just a short time, a week or
really.
two, how much difference it makes. So, teeth, if you go to the Animal Biomes website, they actually market teeth as well, and they do sell it,
Okay.
because they did the studies to prove that the microbiome in the mouth was shifting to a healthier microbiome. Because the whole point of the product was developed by a microbiologist whose name is Dr. Emily Stein. I know her well now, and she's phenomenal. And she developed the human product first, which is a little tablet lozenge that you let dissolve in your mouth, like mint flavored. And then there's a water additive for dogs, and they're coming out with a feline version. The canine version is totally safe for dogs to drink in water as well, but they're coming out with a cat specific version that should be even better for their oral microbiome. So, what this microbiologist, Dr. Stein, did is she realized that periodontal disease is, obviously driven by harmful bacteria, but there are very healthy, good bacteria, our microbiome, that if we could just support those guys to take over and help somehow to diminish the bad guys, then we're going to have less periodontal disease, which means less systemic disease. The bacteria that are in the mouth that are causing disease are releasing those odors. So for the little doggy you're talking about, if you're smelling bad breath odor, if it's not coming from the gut, then the nice thing about teeth is, even when you brush the teeth, you still can only affect above the gum line and at the gum line. You can't get below the gum line with a
Right.
toothbrush.
Right.
When the dog is drinking the teeth, it is actually adjusting the bacterial load under the gum line where you can't even get with a brush. So it's really doing an extensive, collaborative effort for the mouth and then systemically for the whole body. And I will just explain to everybody so they understand this product because it's really darn cool. It's all natural ingredients. There's 3 active ingredients in there. 2 of them support healthy bacteria. There's some vitamin B6 and some L-arginine, a particular amino acid. The 3rd ingredient on the package, it says dental prebiotic for, or prebiotic for dental health. The 3rd ingredient is a prebiotic fiber that mimics sugar to the point where it's even more attractive to bad bacteria and yeast. So I'm going to tell you, this is really good for skin too. It's so attractive to them that they will select that over sugar or the breakdowns of carbohydrates. And they will go bind to that, but they can't use it for food, so they starve. So you have bad bacteria or yeast, if they're in the body too, you have them dying off, and you have good bacteria being supported and they're taking over, and voila, you have a healthier microbiome, you have better breath, or microbiome in the mouth as well as systemically, because the dogs are drinking it, sloshes around the mouth when they drink the water, and then they swallow it and it goes systemically. So I've seen dogs with MRSA bladder infections where no antibiotic would touch it. And I've seen 2 dogs resolve MRSAs with teeth. It
Wow.
is remarkable. And the only reason I thought to do that is because Dr. Stein told me to.
Yeah.
She's like, we're making a drinkable version for humans because we're seeing such good results with dogs with skin problems and bladder problems and all these things because they swallow it. With humans, when you just take the lozenge, it's only doing your oral health, which is phenomenal. People get
Right.
really good results with it. But they're making a drinkable version, which is the same as the dog one. You can drink the dog version, by the way. And they're making that for people so that you can drink it as well. The one thing to know about this product that is very important is that don't put it in the food only because it's not really going to work very well at all, because because the natural sugars in the food are going to compete with the product. The whole point of that, the reason, because this is important, the reason why it's designed to be put in drinking water is because then the bacteria are going to go to that because there's nothing else going on for them to go to. But if you give it with food, then there's enough food that they're going to be able to, use that for their energy source. So this is basically stealing by competing with their energy source, and really helping to naturally. I mean, what a great concept, because instead of using an antibiotic to kill or an antifungal to kill the yeast, you're just stealing their energy so they die off. It is a phenomenal. I've seen dogs with horrific. You can actually soak. You can do little foot dips and everything in a teeth soak. So
really, I'm going to get it. And she just did the animal biome test. So we're going to get the results back on it and kind of look at what we've got. But I'm going to order it for her and use her dog.
Thank you, Joyce. I just saw a mess. I just saw thank you, Joyce. I was self-conscious that I was talking too long and I didn't know when we need. So, but I love that you brought that up. Thank you, Joyce, because I do talk people through this because this is really important. There are a lot of dogs, especially, of course, doggies that eat fresh food diets, that don't drink a whole lot of water, especially if it's not hot, it's not summer, they're not exercising. They don't typically drink a lot of water, and that's natural and that's great. So then we do need a little method to get around this. And so what you can do is put it in something that's mostly water. So either diluted broth, bone broth, or goat milk or whatever. But as Dr. Stein counseled me, it should be about 75% water. If it's 3/4 water and 1/4 yummy liquidy stuff, then it will still work. And so I tested my lab when she first told me that. Of course, I have a lab, but I gave her, 3/4 water and 1/4 bone broth, and she laps it right up. She's like, "Oh my God, this is great." I'm like, "It's mostly water," and she didn't care. So, so that people do that all the time. So that's a great. And the other thing to answer Joyce fully, which I think is also important, is that the way this product was designed, as dogs are, if you're able to put it in the drinking bowl, they visit the bowl several times throughout the day, hopefully, to drink water. And so if you are giving it in diluted goat milk or diluted broth or whatever, ideally, if you can only to remember to do it once or twice a day, do it. It's still super helpful. But if you can do it multiple times a day, 3 or 4 times a day, all the better. So what I would say is make depending on the size of your dog, you make like an 8-ounce portion of, 6 ounces of water, 2 ounces of bone broth, and then divide it into 2 ounces and feed that 4 times a day in between meals. That way they're getting a consistent influx of those ingredients that are tying up those yucky bacteria and or yeast and putting them to the curb so that, they don't have the food competing with it. So.
Oh my gosh, you're genius.
Oh, thank you. Well, I mean, I swear, part of my huge, I just feel so blessed that, I mean, I'm passionate. So I just like, I'm a sponge around people that I can learn from. It's like, I want to learn everything so I can
Yeah.
share it. But the universe puts me in wonderful people's paths, such as yours, to help share. Thank you, thank you, thank you. But, the people I have met along the way, like Dr. Emily Stein, they sought me out because they saw one of my dental articles. They know I'm big on dentistry. I have a huge, I have lectures on dentistry and all that stuff. And they sought me out. They're like, hey, we saw some of your articles in the Integrative Vet Journal on dental. Do you want to know about our product? And so I had to, Zoom with them and several conversations with them since. And this product has literally revolutionized a lot of my pets' lives. So,
yeah, I actually want to reach out to her and see if
a
she
lot of my
wants to come
patients.
on and have us talk about it, because
She would love it.
I
Yeah.
do believe, just like with people, I mean, we're swallowing everything into our guts. So if our mouth microbiome is not healthy, what are we going to do?
Exactly. And
Yeah,
even
so
Dr. Holly Gans at Animal Biome is a big fan of them, as I mentioned. But yeah, Dr. Emily Stein, the creator of Teeth, by the way, the human version is called Daily Dental Cares. And like I said, they are coming out with a drinkable version, but right now the little lozenge, and it is available on Amazon, but you can buy it straight from their website, which is like Primal Health. But Dr. Emily Stein said the same thing about their gut health. She said, in one of our very first conversations, when I'm like, oh my gosh, I really love you, you're amazing, is that she said, what's happening when these dogs are, drinking it is it's going to their gut. Cause she goes, that's where the origin of all this problem's coming from, is the gut. And I was like, yay. And then she started talking about the soil and how, well, even before that, it's coming from the soil. And I'm like, oh, yes. Yeah, and she's a microbiologist. I mean, she knows these things.
Yeah.
So yeah, anybody who's all about the microbiome, I mean, she's right on your thread. So
yeah, I love it. I love it.
Mhm.
Because I am all about, as a groomer, the skin's microbiome is like my,
a whole nother great topic.
it's just
Yep.
something that
And teeth. So it's great for you to know, Carrie, because of your, your niche as groomer and skin health and all the knowledge you have there, and the people that you get to share information with, is that when they're taking the teeth orally, in the drinking water, or the diluted broth or whatever, it is obviously helping systemically to still help the skin, but you can put it topically on the skin, or as I mentioned, when they have pododermatitis or really inflamed feet or pustules or cysts or whatever's going on. I've seen dogs with bloody feet that are just so inflamed. And then you dip them in teeth, and you don't even have to soak them. So Dr. Stein's like, you just need to submerge them. They just need to get saturated twice a day. You can take a little scoop of the teeth, I tell people, put it in a little 12-ounce jar with a lid if you have one, big enough to dip the foot if you can. Just dip all 4 feet, just submerge, and then let it, pat it dry, let it air dry. What Dr. Stein taught me, cap off the jar, put it away, use that same jar for the PM treatment, do an AM treatment, a PM treatment, and then discard that and make a fresh jar the next day. But one, batch can go for, 2 dips. Or if you're applying it to the skin, she says, don't, like if you have armpits or groin or wherever there's hot spots or whatever, that she's like, if you missed it on there and it just lightly spray, it's not going to work that well. You need to saturate it. So she suggested getting one of those plastic squeeze bottles that has a nozzle spigot that comes out. And then you can just literally, and even if your pet doesn't like their foot dipped, you can just easily douse their foot without them having to do anything. So that's a great way. So a lot of my clients do that. And then you can do that twice a day. And one thing she taught me, which is fun to know, is that she said, if clients are dipping the feet or whatever, if the feet seem more itchy or maybe a little more red, or they're going at them a little more in the first 24 to 36 hours, tell people they're not having a bad reaction to the product. The yeast and bacteria are dying off. Because when they die off, they release more toxins. Yeah. And then the body gets even more itchy and reactive. It's like, these guys are dying. And, so if that happens, she said, after 36 hours, it's just going to get better and better. And I have literally seen awful, awful feet be remarkably better within a week.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited because I'm going to find out if I can run this through my microbubbles machine, because I do microbubbles. So I'm like,
that would be a great question for Dr. Stein and her assistant, Lindsay. Is amazing. They're a great team.
I gotta call the microbubble machine guy and make sure, because I do, Newer Gear. I use the Newer Gear lotion that I run through that machine at the end of each bath.
I love it. Yeah,
me too. So anyway, we have taken up so much of your time, and I could talk to you forever and ever. And I just it's just a blessing to talk to you. You're so much fun.
Oh, thank you. Likewise,
So,
likewise. Thank you for
yeah,
having
hopefully
me
we'll
share.
have you on. And if ever you're like, you know what, I need to get on live somewhere and I need to tell somebody something, just contact me. I can do a live anytime you want with you. So
Oh,
just let me know.
you're awesome. If I'm feeling the bug, I know where to go.
Yeah. I mean, because sometimes it happens. You're like, people need to know this,
Right. Let me
You get so
share.
excited. I
Thank
know.
you. You can provide a forum for me to share when,
Yeah. Anytime. We're
I
here
really
for you.
appreciate
So,
that. Thank you. Thank you.
um, I want you all to know, if you're listening to this, you watch us on the replay, don't forget you can reach out to
Thank you,
Dr. Katie
everyone.
Kangas
Jessica,
anytime.
Joyce.
She can do stuff. If you're not in the San Diego area, that's okay. You can still reach out to Dr. Kangas. She can look at your blood work. She can go over everything with you. So she's always available in that episode. In here, we have all of her information, so you can get a hold of her there. Thank you guys so much for your great questions. It always helps lead us.
Yes.
And
Thank you. It
right
did.
before, when
They were perfect. Thank you. Thank
yeah,
you. Yeah.
I know. I told Dr. Kangas, I don't know what we're going to talk about. I knew I wanted to talk about fasting, mostly because I just got beat up on Facebook, and
That's a good reason. That's,
yeah.
a good
It usually does, because
instigator.
that's where I can find out what needs to be
Hmm.
talked about. Okay,
Exactly.
we need to
Yep.
talk about this, because you can't really text it. I can't really like give all the information in a quick little, whatever. So this is a good opportunity for us. So, but you've just been so great, and you guys bringing these questions. Look at where we went, all
I
over the map,
know. It was great. Thank you.
all
Thank you.
over the
Yeah. And
map.
some of the
It's so
stuff that was
amazing.
brought up, I'm like, oh, I wanted to get that in. Thank you for paving the way for that.
Well, and
So,
I knew that I would learn some. I'm always learning stuff from you. So teeth, thank you guys so much for bringing that up, because I'm
yeah.
all over that.
And the product is called Teef, Teef. It's like a
Okay.
child saying teeth. Yep.
That's a
So
cute name. What a
it's
cute
very
name.
cute.
What a
Super
cute name.
cute.
So,
Hmm.
Lori, thank you so much. Lori's in the background. She's the one typing everything for you
Thank
guys.
you, Lori.
If I had to do it, you would get nothing, because but thank you guys so much. I'm here every Wednesday at 4:00. So, if the week's going on and you got some questions, I'm always on here with one of the healers that I bring on. Usually a veterinarian, but sometimes I bring on some amazing healers. Dr. Canizero is going to be with us next week. So I will see you guys next week. Dr. Kangas, thank you so much for all of your
Absolutely.
knowledge that you share with us.
Thank
Appreciate it.
you.
We'll
My
see you
pleasure.
soon.
All right. Bye,
Take
everybody.
care. Bye,
Thanks.
everybody.